Uncover the 10 miraculous women in Jesus' genealogy, God's unexpected plan revealed. In the days of the patriarchs, when the family of Jacob wandered in the land of Canaan, a great reckoning awaited the family of Judah. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, Judah was burdened by the death of his sons, and the gravity of loss hung heavily upon his heart. Tamar, his daughter-in-law, was left as a widow in a land where lineage and legacy were inseparably bound to one's honor. The sun dipped low over the dusty hills of Hebron, casting long shadows across the olive groves. Tamar walked among these ancient trees, the bitterness of abandonment gnawing at her. She had wed Er, the firstborn of Judah, only for the Lord to strike him down for his wickedness. She was then promised Onan, but he too chose the path of rebellion, leaving her empty and desolate. Judah's words of promise of giving her his youngest, Shelah, now echoed hollow. He had chosen to sideline her, fearing that the destiny of widows would repeat itself, alone, in a culture that weighed her worth against her ability to bear children. Tamar's heart began to ignite with the flames of purpose and strategy. Rejecting the confines of her widow's garb, she resolved to take her fate into her own hands. This act of defiance would set the stage for divine fulfillment. Tamar fashioned a veil, shrouding herself to mask her identity, and took her place at the entrance of Enaim. As dusk turned to twilight, the air crackled with tension. Judah approached, unsuspecting, a man driven by desire, blinded to the truth cloaked in shadows. Tamar stood, heart racing but resolute. She had become a harlot for a moment, a gambit of desperation that pushed the boundaries of custom and duty. "Please," she implored, her voice sweet yet knowing. When he offered a goat for her services, she seized the moment, demanding a pledge. The signet, the cord, and the staff, tokens of his identity, swapped in the darkness for a promise of a future. As they parted, a shiver coursed through her spine, mingled with fear and hope. Tamar returned to her widow's garments, yet nestled within her was the burgeoning life of a child, an echo of the promise still to be realized. The growing seed within her body symbolized not only her strength but the continuation of a legacy at risk of being extinguished. The months passed, but soon the weight of her actions bore fruit. Tamar felt the whispers of judgment as the news of her pregnancy spread like wildfire among the tribes. Judah's heart, once again entwined by a tempest of emotions, filled with rage. His own daughter-in-law had shamed him. The command was given to bring her forth, ready to condemn her according to the law without due understanding. Yet here, at the precipice of ruin, Tamar's courage blossomed. Standing before Judah, she revealed her hand. "Bring me the items of the man who has fathered my children," she proclaimed, holding the very tokens he had given her. In that moment, the truth crashed over Judah with the relentless tide of revelation. What would Judah's heart choose in this moment of reckoning? Would he condemn her, or would he finally understand the depth of his neglect? As the unexpected plan of God unfurled through Tamar, an overlooked woman now central to his divine narrative, the legacy of 2 nations hung in the balance. The tapestry of Judah's lineage shimmered with vital purpose, beckoning the reader to ponder the unfolding of God's redemptive story through unlikely paths. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Tamar stood there, resolved and poised, a hidden gem of faith and determination, awaiting the fate that righteousness might restore. Would Judah see the hand of God in this intricate play? The narrative of their lives was about to change, the legacy of the patriarchs poised for discovery as the true purpose of their entwined destinies loomed large. Judah's heart trembled within him, the storm of recognition raging as he beheld the tokens in Tamar's hand. The ground seemed to shift beneath him, shame and realization flooded his spirit. "She is more righteous than I," he exclaimed, understanding that his fears had led him to deny her the honor due a widow. The words echoed in the solemn air, a path paved with truth where once darkness reigned. As the weight of his declaration settled, Judah summoned the elders of his clan. Before them stood Tamar, whose faith had wrested hope from despair, a single act that would birth redemption. "Let her live," he commanded, each word a declaration of renewed life, "for she carries my seed." The tension that bound the assembly, broken by the vibrant strokes of grace, filled the surroundings with an electric sense of inevitability. Tamar returned to her dwelling, now bearing the hope of life blooming within her. She felt the presence of the Almighty upon her, knowing she had been an instrument in a celestial plan, though mere shadows obscured its grandeur. As her pregnancy advanced, whispers of God's providence began to wrap around the household, hinting at the promise spoken to Abraham so many generations before. In time, the day of delivery came, enveloped in starry anticipation. Tamar gave birth to twins, Perez and Zerah. The circumstance of their arrival bore similarities to the tumult of their mother's journey. Zerah, reaching forth first, had his hand bound with a scarlet thread, marking him as the firstborn. But Perez broke forth, leading the way into the world, destined to carry the lineage of Judah. Their names echoed through history, each embodying the conflict and the fulfillment of God's covenant promises. The birth of Perez was not an endpoint but a divine pivot. "For it is through him that the promises of God shall unfurl," whispered the heavens, as the lineage of Judah gained new significance. Tamar gazed upon her sons, the realization dawning that both grace and struggle would define their paths, shaping a future intertwined with the unfolding story of Israel. As the seasons passed, Perez grew to be a man of valor. His faith mirrored that of his mother, propelled by the eternal whispers of God. The stories of his forebears intermingled with his own, forming a rich tapestry of providence that connected him to the great patriarch Abraham, whose promise still lingered upon the horizon. His dreams were colored with ambition as the tribe of Judah began to rise in prominence, and from the dust of these beginnings, generations would spin forth the kingship, the prophet's prophecies yet realized. "A scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet," the seer would later declare, foretelling a great ruler rising from this very lineage. Even as God worked silently, weaving his will into the hearts of men, Tamar's legacy pulsed at the center of his divine narration. Amidst the reality of human frailty, the promises loomed larger, beckoning toward a greater climax of grace, a baby yet to be born, who would bridge heaven and earth. As stories turned with time, anticipation surged in the unseen realm. What greater purpose awaited the line of Judah? What radical fulfillment was yet to come? For even now, in the shadows cast by their tales, the shadow of a cross lingered, waiting for the appointed moment when the true and ultimate fulfillment of God's sovereign plan would break forth, transforming not just a lineage, but the very fabric of eternity. The days passed, and the seasons turned as Perez grew, nurtured by his mother's loving hands and surrounded by the whispers of faith that echoed through the camp. Those who beheld him witnessed a child marked for greatness. Even as a youth, the hand of God rested upon him, igniting in his heart a resolve to follow the path laid before him, intertwined with the covenant promises. In Judah, the elders observed the growth of Perez with a mixture of pride and expectation. They recalled the weight of Judah's words, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah," and they recognized that the tribe was poised for elevation. Perez often sat among them, his countenance reflecting both wisdom and strength, as he listened to the legends of his lineage and the mighty acts of God. Yet behind the veil of this noble promise, shadows drifted, for a strife had begun to surface within the family. The tale of Joseph, Judah's brother, was not merely one of dreams but also one of betrayal. When news reached Judah that his son Joseph had been sold into Egypt, anguish filled his heart. "Our brother is lost," he lamented, "for the hand of our own has dealt the blow." The specter of guilt and remorse haunted him. He was beset by the echoes of their past sins against Joseph, a brother whom he had not protected. In that time of upheaval, Perez wrestled with the legacy of his lineage. How can we claim the promises amid such division? He pondered. It was then divine revelation broke forth. The Spirit of the Lord whispered to him, drawing him deeper into understanding. He recalled the faith of Tamar, the woman whose courage had reshaped their destiny. What if redemption lies not only in our bloodline but in our actions? He spoke to those gathered, for we are called to rise above our past. It was during a moment of prayer and reflection that Perez determined to seek out his uncle Joseph. In the land of Egypt, there may be a way for healing. With the blessing of his father Judah, he set forth upon a path fraught with trepidation but also ripe with divine purpose. As Perez journeyed, the fabric of God's providence began to unravel. Little did he know that Joseph, now a man of great power, would soon face trials of his own. The very brothers who had sought to rid themselves of him would be confronted with their past, their jealousy laying bare upon the altar of forgiveness. God's hand guided Perez as he approached the gates of Egypt, faith weaving an unbroken thread through his heart. Upon reaching his destination, Perez beheld the wonder of a kingdom steeped in wealth, a land where Joseph presided with wisdom that shone like gold. Yet the brothers did not recognize him as they stood before Joseph, now ruling with the authority of Pharaoh. "I seek my brother," Perez cried, while the tensions heightened. The unearthing of truth awaited as a spring storm. Then, amidst the unfolding drama, the heart of God's plan throbbed anew, the reconciliation of brothers, the mending of families, and the awakening of destinies yet fulfilled. For within this crucible of conflict, a sacred tension pulsed with promise. What greater harvest of grace would emerge from this family torn asunder? As Perez lingered in the presence of his uncle, the air thickened with possibility. For the Lord had purpose, unfathomable and divine, sending echoes of a greater Son who would redeem both Israel and the world. What revelation awaited in the shadow of the cross that loomed beyond the horizon of history? Thus the tale continued to unfold, a mystery wrapped in the promise of God's steadfast love. What was the ultimate culmination of his sovereign plan? As Perez stood before the great ruler of Egypt, the gravity of that moment weighed heavily upon him. Joseph, once a lad filled with dreams and visions, had been cast into a life drenched in trials and triumphs. Now, clothed in the fine garments of authority, he bore the burden of a people in need, and yet he remained a brother separated from his own flesh by the sin of pride and envy. "Who are you that seeks my favor?" Joseph queried, his eyes narrowing on Perez, who felt the warmth of recognition stir within his spirit. "Speak, that I may discern your heart." With trembling lips, Perez replied, "I am Perez, son of Judah, your brother. I seek you, for the Lord has stirred my heart to find you and to mend what was broken." There was a stillness in the air, as if time itself held its breath, awaiting the response from the man who had endured the pangs of betrayal. Dazzled by the truth, Joseph's heart beat faster. Memories flooded his mind, the faces of their father, Jacob, and their brothers, and that fateful day when they had sold him to the Ishmaelites. "You are of the bloodline that bore my anguish, yet you come to me in peace," he affirmed. In that moment, his own pain was met with a glimmer of hope, mirroring the promises that had once been foretold. With urgent passion, Perez continued, "In our land, our family is divided by guilt, for shame clings to us like a shroud. But the Lord has led me to you, that we may reconcile and walk in the light of redemption. There is a way back to covenant love, I believe it." At these words, Joseph's heart softened, and the turmoil within him began to quiet. Reconciliation? Is such a thing possible? He mused, aching for the embrace of brotherhood once lost. The need for restoration was palpable, as was the shadow of their shared past, and he felt the Spirit of God urging him to choose forgiveness. Perez, sensing the shift, implored, "Let us not dwell in the darkness of our past, but look towards the dawn of a new promise. Perhaps in our union, we fulfill what was penned in the heavens. For it is said, the Lord will make you the head and not the tail," Deuteronomy 28 verse 13. Joseph's eyes shifted, contemplating the weight of reclaiming his lost family, and a whisper from heaven echoed in his spirit. "Indeed, there is a thread of divine design woven through our suffering, a purpose that beckons us forward." Humble weakness gripped him, and he began to realize that the scars of his betrayal could become the very stitches that mend their united fate. Moments passed as brothers stood on the precipice of revelation. But alas, what would be the response of the others, the brothers who had cast Joseph aside? Would shame continue to reign instead of grace? In that sacred space, the air thickened with unresolved longing, as Perez's quest for healing hovered fragile yet strong. How would their family navigate the torrent of sin's legacy, and could they resurrect what had been buried? But darkness lingered nearby, for unknown to them, the brothers were encamped just outside the gates of Egypt, burdened by their guilt and hiding from the truth they dared not confront. A sudden resolve rose within Perez. "Let us call them forth, for they too must confront their sins in the light of day. Herein lay a challenge: would they accept the hand extended towards grace, or would they wither under the reproach of unhealed wounds? Thus, the stage was set for the unfolding of God's sovereign plan. Redemption awaited at the crossroads, but what sacrifice would need to prevail before they could grasp the promise entwined in their destiny? In quiet expectation, the answer lay just beyond their grasp. Cloaked in divine mystery, each heart would be a vessel of grace, or a monument to despair, echoing through the ages. As the sun cast its golden glow over the land of Egypt, Joseph took a step back, captivated by the weight of his brother's words. The words of Perez hung in the air as a promise yet to be fulfilled, and in that moment, the seed of hope took root in him. The vision of a reconciled family flickered before him, glowing brightly against the shadows of their tumultuous past. "Bring forth my brothers," Joseph commanded with authority, his voice echoing through the halls of power. "Let them stand before me, that we may speak of our father's house." The guards departed swiftly, following the decree of their master. Meanwhile, Joseph's heart raced as vivid memories of his brothers sifted through his mind. The laughter they had shared, their shared dreams, and ultimately, the treachery that had ripped them apart. Near the threshold, Perez could sense the anxious breath of anticipation. What if they refused to come? He asked softly, concern mingled with hope. What if they carry their burdens as penalties rather than seeking healing? Yet Joseph met him with a firm gaze. There can be no healing without confrontation. The Lord requires truth to flow like water through the damaged crevices in our hearts. His eyes, once filled with anger and bitterness, now shimmered with the light of understanding. Moments passed, yet felt like an eternity until the doors swung open wide, and the other brothers filed into the chamber. Their faces were drawn, the weight of history clearly etched upon their features. At the front stood Judah, a man transformed by the years, yet haunted by the shadows of the past. "Why have you summoned us, Joseph?" Judah spoke, trepidation clinging to his every word as he searched for signs of the brother they had wronged. "Brothers," Joseph replied, his voice both firm and gentle, "I have received one among you who has spoken of redemption." He gestured toward Perez, and Joseph could see the flickers of recognition sweep over their faces. "What manner of jest is this?" Simeon challenged, his chest heaving with the weight of unresolved guilt. "Do you toy with our shame, Joseph?" Joseph stood firm, letting the silence expand, feeling the stirrings of God's Spirit urging him to bear witness to the grace that was now at hand. "I am not your enemy. I have not come to condemn but to reveal the mercy that God has weaved into the tapestry of our narrative. I am your brother, and yet I carry our shared burdens." Their eyes widened, and memories of the past collided with the present. The echo of betrayal and injustice hung heavily in the air. "What kind of mercy can exist when we have caused you such pain?" Reuben whispered, his voice quivering as tears began to form. "Mercy is born from the very heart of God," Joseph replied, his tone inflected with the weight of divine knowledge. "It is His gift to us, unearned yet freely given. It calls us to lay down our guilt and take up forgiveness. Perhaps the Lord sent me ahead of you, not just to save many lives but to weave us back into His covenant." With each word uttered, the room filled with an unseen power, faith sparking like a flame igniting dry grass. Each brother stood ensnared within a storm of emotions, wrestling between fear and longing, each heart desperately needing the balm of reconciliation. "Joseph, forgive us," Judah finally uttered, as the tears cascading down his cheeks mirrored years' worth of sorrow. "We have wronged you, and we have wronged our father." The moment froze, time suspended as forgiveness hung in the balance, trembling between truth and grace. Joseph's heart quickened as he approached his brothers, breathing the very words that might set them free, "I forgive you." But even as these words fell, a greater sense of urgency lingered in the air. Dark clouds brewed on the horizon beyond Egypt, foreboding an even greater trial, that they would soon face a test of faith that would challenge not only their family bond but the very foundation of their covenant with God. What would be demanded of them in the days to come, as the truth resonated through the gathered brothers, a deeper truth. Echoed also, God's sovereign hand had prepared a path through the chaos. Each would play a role in the divine narrative yet to unfold, and the greatest sacrifice was yet to come. Thus, the promise of restoration stood precarious, poised at the edge of uncertainty, while the underlying mystery of God's unfolding purpose loomed ever larger in the hearts of those who sought him. Would they step forward in faith, or would they draw back in fear, allowing past sins to dictate the future? As the echoes of Joseph's words reverberated within the chamber, a heavy silence enveloped the brothers. The weight of their past hung thickly in the air, yet glimmers of hope intertwined with the darkness, stirring their weary hearts. Joseph stood before them, the lines of worry etched deep into his face, yet a flicker of divine purpose illuminated his countenance. "My brothers," he spoke, his voice steady and clear, "the path forward lies not in the shadows of our past but in the grace that awaits us." Judah raised his eyes, the burden of guilt still heavy upon him. "We stand before you now, Joseph, but what hope can we cling to after such betrayal? How can one be restored when the scales of justice weigh so heavily against us?" "Hope is born of surrender," Joseph replied, recalling the many times he had been thrust into trials beyond understanding. "Even when all seemed lost, our God through every adversity has set his plan into motion. It was not by mere fate that I was brought to this position, but rather, through the sovereign hand of the Lord." In that moment, Perez stepped forward with a heart emboldened by his leader's strength. "Let us not dwell only on the pain we caused. Surely, there is a story woven through our struggles, a story of redemption that we must now embrace." Touched by these words, Reuben glanced toward his brothers, the years of anguish stripped away, replaced by the piercing hope of brotherly love that lingered on the edges of their hearts. "What must we do, then?" he asked earnestly, his voice a mere whisper of the man he once was. Joseph's eyes narrowed with divine intensity as he answered, "Go to our father, Jacob. Bring him to me that I may reveal to him not just who I have become, but what the Lord has decreed. Tell him all that I possess in Egypt, present him with the riches you find, and share with him of the prosperity that awaits him here. Let him know I am alive." At this proclamation, a wave of joy surged through the brothers like a rushing river. They had been given a way back to their father, an opportunity to heal the wounds of separation, to mend the fabric of their family. Yet beneath this emerging joy, a further weight pressed upon them. They now held the weight of truth in their hands. As they gathered, a shared resolve formed among the brothers. "We will not let fear lead us," Simeon declared, courage igniting his voice, "for if God has truly placed our brother in such a position, then we will trust his providence." Thus, the brothers left the chamber, their hearts beating with renewed purpose as they ventured back to Canaan, emboldened by the promise of reconciliation. But in the depths of Joseph's heart remained a foreboding sense of the trials that awaited them, the looming famine that would soon stretch across the land, drawing their family into an even deeper entanglement of need and faith. Through the murmurings of the crowd in the marketplace and the hustle of the Egyptian streets, Joseph sensed the prophetic undertones of their journey. The Lord, in his sovereignty, was orchestrating these encounters, exposing the fabric of their hearts and intertwining their destinies. But small tremors rippled through Joseph's spirit as he recalled the dreams of his youth, the stars and the sheaves bowing before him. He knew that they were only the beginning. A greater fulfillment was at hand, one that would not only resurrect a family but light the path toward the very future that the Lord had ordained. And as the brothers traveled forth, a shadow of uncertainty loomed over their journey still, for soon they would confront the depths of their past sins, and in doing so, reveal the breadth of God's grace. What more would God unveil in his timing? How would the trials they faced serve to deepen their understanding of his faithfulness? The cosmic tapestry of divine purpose was still being crafted, as the time moved ever closer to the moment when the promise would not merely be spoken, but revealed in breathtaking splendor. As the brothers set forth upon the winding roads toward Canaan, their hearts were aflame with renewed hope, but unease simmered beneath their resolve. The burdens of the past weighed heavily as they journeyed across the arid landscape, the ghosts of their betrayal haunting each step. They spoke in hushed tones, sharing their fears as well as their dreams for reconciliation, their eyes occasionally flickering to the skies, the sun setting like a golden promise upon the horizon. Can our Father truly bear the weight of our confession? Asher pondered aloud, anxiety fraying the edges of his spirit. What if he cannot accept that his beloved Joseph lives, and we are the bearers of such news. Judah placed his hand upon Asher's shoulder, a gesture laden with brotherly love. We carry a message of hope, not of despair. Our father's heart has long yearned for such tidings. He may be grieved at our past, but I believe joy can eclipse his sorrow, for we have traveled far from our failings. As they drew near to the familiar land of Canaan, memories flooded back to them, the fields bathed in sunlight, the embrace of their father, Jacob, and the laughter that had once rung through their home. Yet the weight of their actions threatened to eclipse these cherished recollections. Could such joy ever return? Arriving at their father's tent, they stood in a hesitant semicircle, the weight of their intentions holding them captive. Reuben stepped forward, the demeanor of a leader awakening in him from the depths of remorse. "Father! We have returned, bringing tidings of Joseph." His voice trembled with each syllable as he blurted forth the truth. Jacob, renowned as a man of faith yet fragile in his old age, lifted his eyes, weary yet mirroring an instant glimmer of hope. "Is it true? My son, Joseph?" he queried, disbelief weaving through his words like strands of a frayed garment. With heavy hearts yet determined spirits, each brother revealed the great truth: how Joseph had risen to power in Egypt, offering hope amidst imminent famine. They spoke of the wealth he commanded, the provisions he had prepared, and the invitation extended to Jacob and their entire family. As they did, their hearts raced with each revelation, praying that their father would not falter under the weight of this newfound truth. Tears filled Jacob's eyes as he listened, joy and disbelief wrestling for mastery over his weary heart. "Joseph lives," he breathed, disbelief giving way to the frailty of his spirit. The dawn of hope shone bright as he grappled with the reality that seemed too grand to grasp. "Come," Judah said firmly, "let us journey to Egypt. We shall find him, our family shall be whole again." The brothers urged Jacob toward the road of renewal, where reconciliation awaited like sun-kissed meadows after stormy rains, yet before they could embrace the future fully, a whisper of foreboding curled around them. The famine they had heard of in Egypt was encroaching upon Canaan, an ominous storm cloud creeping toward their cherished home. Joseph, in the sanctuary of his readiness, had known of this impending doom and prepared for it a divine orchestration, hinting at even greater purposes yet to unfold. As they set forth, the sky darkened with clouds heavy with foretelling rain. What further trials awaited them on this path? What would be demanded of them in their pursuit of restoration? Unbeknownst to Jacob, his heart that had longed for Joseph would soon face the tumultuous reality of reconciliation, a tale that would not only intertwine fates but would also be set against the backdrop of redemption. And the remnants of God's sovereign plan were still unfolding. With every step they took, they were on the brink of witnessing the miracle of grace that intertwines through generations. The promise awaited its full revelation, ready to unfold in the fullness of time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the land, Jacob gathered his sons around him, the winds of fate rustling the fabric of their lives. "Let us prepare ourselves for this journey," he said, his voice steady despite the tumult of emotions swirling within. "Our steps shall not falter, for hope beckons us toward our beloved Joseph." The brothers began to ready their provisions, each man's heart racing with both anticipation and trepidation. Questions of what awaited them lingered in the air like fragrant incense. Would Joseph receive them as brothers after all the years that had passed? Would their father's love remain untainted by their past misdeeds? As they embarked upon the road stretching ahead like the promise of a new dawn, the weight of guilt began to transform into resolve. They had come to seek forgiveness, and with every stride, they felt the chains of remorse begin to loosen. Approaching the borders of Egypt, they encountered merchants along the pathways, tradesmen gossiping about the great governor of the land. Whispers of Joseph's wisdom and might filled their ears as they moved forward, a balm to their anxious hearts. "The famine is fierce," one merchant spoke, "but Joseph, the son of Jacob, has provisions aplenty. He has become a father to Pharaoh, and under his counsel, the land thrives." At this news, Jacob's heart swelled with pride and hope intertwined. As they neared the gates of the city, the familiar customs and sounds enveloped them, singing a melody of ancient memories interlaced with current realities. The air sparkled with unspoken promise, as God's hand led them toward reconciliation. When they finally traversed the threshold into Pharaoh's court, the sight of grandeur and authority dazzled their senses. But among the opulence, they sought one face, their brother Joseph. As they waited, apprehension twisted within their chests. Would he recognize them? Would he greet them with scorn or love? Then, like a whisper of destiny, Joseph appeared, clad in the finery of Egypt, his face radiating both authority and grace. At that moment, recognition ignited his countenance, and he stood transfixed, the echoes of their shared past rushing over him. The brothers, seized by the weight of their history, bowed low before him, their hearts heavy with shame yet desperate for a chance to explain. As Joseph stepped forward, his eyes filled with tears. "Brothers," he spoke, his voice laden with emotion, "you are come to me in your time of need, but know this, it was not you who sent me here, but God." The proclamation thundered through the air, shaking the soil beneath them with divine purpose. "Fear not," he continued, "for God meant it unto good, to save many people alive." In that moment, the echoes of their past resounded with a purpose they had failed to see. The depths of God's providential plan unfolded before them like a tapestry of redemption woven through pain and forgiveness. Tears streamed down their faces as the brothers embraced Joseph, the bond of blood overpowering the shadows of their past. "We are one," Judah murmured, looking into Joseph's eyes, "and we shall be healed." Yet, unbeknownst to them all, God's sovereign plan was not yet fully revealed. There loomed over the horizon the shadow of an unfulfilled prophecy, one destined to carry them all through trials yet unseen. A lineage woven with divine purpose awaited to emerge from the depths of darkness into a future rich with promise, and as they stood together, a family once fractured, they were on the precipice of witnessing not only forgiveness but also the unfolding of God's grander design, tied through generations, anchored in hope, a plan that would resonate through the ages, culminating in a glory they could scarcely imagine. Joseph drew back from his brothers, wiping the tears from his eyes. His heart swelled with compassion as he gazed upon the faces of those who had wronged him, yet sought restoration. The weight of their past mistakes hung heavily over them, but in that moment, Joseph knew that God's hand was at work, guiding each one of them toward healing. "Come closer," he beckoned, as hope began to flourish in the hearts of the men who had once cast him aside. "Let us not linger in the shadows of yesterday, but rather embrace the light of today." As they stepped forward, Joseph's voice softened. "You must understand the years of my suffering were not in vain. The Lord has ordained our paths, not merely for our sake, but for the salvation of many. The famine has spread across the lands, yet here I stand, appointed by God to provide for our family and a multitude beside." In reverence, the brothers listened, their hearts beginning to heal under Joseph's words. "And now, my family, I will let you know of the provisions available. Leave no one behind, the time has come for us to be united in this time of need." Judah, emboldened by Joseph's expression of forgiveness, stepped forward. "My lord, we are but your servants, and we have come not only to seek food, but to acknowledge the pain we have caused. We stilled our hearts long enough to feel our guilt. We have wronged you deeply, and it is our wish to restore the bond broken between us." Joseph's heart, once bruised, began to mend as he heard his brother's admission. "There is no need for further sorrow, our past bears witness to our need for grace. God has turned our history into a testimony of his goodness." Then Joseph turned to the attendants in Pharaoh's court, vibrant figures who had witnessed his rise. "Bring the finest of Egypt, the abundance of grain, and let it go forth to my family. Let my brothers return to Canaan and gather our father, he must come to see the bountiful harvest set before him." As the attendants hurried to obey, a moment of stillness wove through the air as the brothers looked at one another, unsure of what this might mean for their future. Anxiety still pressed at their hearts, but beneath it lay a flicker of hope that quivered with the promise of family restored, and so, the brothers made their way to the palace chamber that day, filled with the provisions that Joseph had commanded be secured for their journey back, a Babylonian caravan of riches, resplendent in the splendor of God's mercy. As they prepared to set forth, Joseph spoke once more, his voice tender with authority. "Do not quarrel among yourselves on the way," he reminded them, invoking a moment of solemnity. There is much to discuss, and every reaction holds weight in God's plan. Remember, He has chosen to leverage our great trials into a story of His salvation. With newfound clarity, the brothers departed from Pharaoh's palace laden with supplies, their hearts pulsating with reverence and a sense of purpose as they traversed the roads back to Canaan. They moved as one, no longer fractured but steadfast in their brotherhood, believing in the reconciliation woven into the fabric of God's destiny. As they approached their father Jacob, the silence was heavy, thick with anticipation. The words that had been left unspoken hung in the air, while the memory of their father's broken heart lingered like a whisper from the past. Little did they know, as they drew near that fertile land of their heritage, that God's sovereign plan was still unfolding a tapestry more intricate than they could foresee, one that bore the weights of trials and triumphs, and would echo down their generations. For in the quiet of that dusk, shadows began to gather once more, waiting to reveal that the unfulfilled promises of the Almighty would soar into the heavens, declaring the glorious lineage of redemption through miraculous women long before their time, destinies intertwined, whispering of hope from ages past. As the setting sun bathed the land in hues of gold, the air hung thick with anticipation as Judah and Joseph's brothers approached their father Jacob. Each step felt like a gigantic leap over a chasm filled with the memories of betrayal and loss, a loss that left scars upon the souls of men who longed for healing. Yet perspectives were shifting, and destiny beckoned them forward. "Father," Reuben began, the tremors of emotion clear in his voice, "the news we bring is one of both sorrow and rejoicing." He hesitated, the weight of their shared past pressing upon him. "Joseph, your son, lives." The frail form of Jacob, his hair now a graying crowning of wisdom, jerked at the proclamation. Disbelief coursed through his veins, but within his weary heart flickered a glimmer of hope. "My Joseph?" he whispered, his voice laced with the tenderness of a parent's enduring love, "is it truly so?" "Yes, Father," Judah stepped forward, conviction igniting his spirit. The revelation that his heart had long yearned for the very spirit of Joseph alive and well painted their plans with the palette of divine providence. "He is the governor of Egypt, a savior in this time of famine. We are to bring you to him, so that family may be whole once more." As Jacob's mind raced with reminiscences of a son he had lost and of the brothers he feared had been lost as well, conflicting emotions spilled forth, gratitude tinged with shadows of regret, but now the tides of forgiveness and reunion washed over the past. With resolve firm but emotions raw, Jacob mounted the cart that would carry him toward reconciliation. "I will go see my son before I die," he proclaimed, determination woven through his words like threads of mercy stitching together torn fabric. On the journey, they traversed hills and valleys reflecting both the depth of their history and the burgeoning hope for a new beginning. God's hand had crafted this remarkable tapestry, and the promise of life thrilled in their hearts. As they entered Egypt, Jacob's spirit felt the weight of the moment. This land, previously a sign of tragedy, now shimmered with purpose, Christ-like grace vibrating through his veins. The echo of Joseph's strength wafted to him like fragrant incense, signaling a reunion that could transform his family. Finally, the day arrived when Joseph, clad in royal garments, received the breathless news of his father's arrival. Having heard the news, Joseph's heart surged with joy infused with the brilliance of God's providence. Unable to contain himself, he rushed to meet Jacob, the moment they had all longed for drawing near. Through the palace gates, Joseph burst forth with the speed of a heart racing toward beloved familiarity. And finally, at last, before his father, they came together. Tears of joy mingled with laughter born from years of separation, the sun igniting their faces aflame with a bond rekindled. "Is it really you, Joseph?" Jacob's voice quivered as he looked upon the son he believed lost forever. "Yes, Father. It is I. God has led me here, and I have held on to faith and dreams for this very moment." The weight of years rolled away, and within that embrace, the atmosphere rippled with the promise of healing. At once, the tumult of their pasts began to dissolve, for God had transformed their suffering into a restoration beyond imagination. Yet as the air shimmered with grace, the unfulfilled prophecies loomed large. Jacob and Joseph would bear witness to God's unfolding plan. Their reunion was not an end but a beginning, a foundation for the generations that would thrive under the grace springing forth from this reunion. For through Joseph's line, a king would rise, and from Jacob's seed, would come one who would change the world forever. His ultimate sacrifice embodied in Jesus Christ, the anticipated hope of all promises spoken. As days passed, the clan assembled, the family once scattered reunited in a tapestry of love interwoven with grace. They rejoiced as their provisions flourished under Joseph's governance, and the future began to bloom anew in hope and abundance. Let us gather in faith, Joseph declared to his family one fateful evening. What was meant for malice, God has turned for good. We stand as witnesses to divine mercy, woven in the fabric of redemption. The stories of Tamar, Perez, and Joseph would boldly echo through the ages, a testimony to God's remarkable grace. And even now, carried through history like a sacred flame, the legacy of miraculous women, those faith-filled spirits who had dared to hope, would find fullness in the salvation promised in Jesus, the Son of David, the ultimate fulfillment of every prophecy spoken. As the sun set upon the vast Egyptian landscape, the glory of their reunion sparkled, reverberating throughout the earth. The glorious narrative of human frailty made radiant through divine power, proclaiming once more that God's light pierces the darkest of shadows. In this sacred legacy, they found their place, joining the chorus of believers throughout the ages. This was a moment of divine resolution, and as they gathered to break bread together, each heart beat in faith, anticipating even greater works yet to be revealed by the one whose plans endured forevermore. Now, dear friend, you too can step into the unfolding story that is God's design for your life. Subscribe immediately to this channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories that can transform your faith journey. Leave a like right now to spread God's word through the algorithm and touch more hearts. I invite you to comment your spiritual reflections below. How has this biblical narrative impacted your faith? Let us unite together, sharing this incredible testimony of grace and redemption with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth right now. Don't wait even one more second to be a vessel for His love.